Two neighbors under the same sky on the same continent. On one side, the United States, the world's largest economy, home to tech giants and a military superpower. Alongside Canada, a bastion of stability. On the other side is a vast geography struggling with endless economic crises, military coups, high inflation, and social inequality. Latin America. In fact, everything started out quite similarly. Both regions were discovered by European powers, both possessed vast natural resources, and both fought bloody wars of independence to break free from colonialism. Even at the beginning of the 1800s, Mexico City, or Lima, appeared far wealthier and more developed than New York or Boston. So what happened that caused history to diverge so dramatically? Why did the North prosper, while the South remained an eternal potential? The answer to this question lies neither in race, nor in religion, nor in the laziness of the people. The answer is hidden in the seeds sown 500 years ago, in the traps set by geography, and in for whom the rules were written. Today, we will dive deep from the dusty pages of history into modern economics. Fasten your seatbelts, because this is not just the story of a continent, but a story of how humanity prospers or remains poor. Our story begins in 1492. However, what matters here is not who came, but why they came. When the Spanish and Portuguese headed south, they encountered a magnificent sight. The gold of the Aztec and Inca empires, silver mines, and millions of indigenous people ready to be exploited. For the Spanish crown, Latin America was, essentially, a mine. They did not come here to settle or build a new life. They came to transport the wealth here to Europe as quickly as possible. We call these extractive institutions. The Spanish established such a system that a small white elite group sat at the very top, while millions of indigenous people and African slaves perished in mines and on massive estates known as haciendas. There were no property rights, no education, and the law protected only those at the very top. The objective was clear: extract the resources and send them back to the center. Now let's look to the north, to the lands where the British arrived. When the British landed on the shores of Virginia or Massachusetts, they were met with disappointment. There was no gold, and there was no dense indigenous population to be put to work. The soil was tough, and the climate was harsh. The British Crown initially tried to establish an extractive system just like the Spanish did, but it failed. This was because the settlers said, "If you do not grant us rights, if you do not give us land, we will not work, and we will starve to death." Thus, inclusive institutions developed in North America out of necessity. People were granted the right to own their own land through laws like the Homestead Act. They established their own local assemblies. These people had come there not to steal wealth, but to live there. This difference was the first and most important seed of the massive divide to come. While a reward for labor system was established in the North, the strong seas system took root in the South. Many people underestimate the importance of geography. But geography is a silent architect that determines a country's destiny. Look at North America, especially the United States. It is as if God gave this place an economic cheat code. At the heart of the continent lies a vast, flat, and incredibly fertile land for agriculture. Even more importantly, there is a massive natural waterway network connecting this land, the Mississippi River system. When a farmer in Ohio produced his wheat, he could place it on a raft and ship it very cheaply to the port of New Orleans, thousands of miles away. Before the era of railways, waterways were the lifeblood of commerce. This allowed North America to rapidly develop a massive internal market. A person in New York could easily trade with someone in Mississippi. Now let's turn to Latin America. This place is a geographical nightmare. In the west, the Andes Mountains, one of the highest mountain ranges in the world, rise like a wall. These mountains tear cities apart from one another. In the 1800s, it was almost impossible to trade between a mine in Peru and a field in Argentina. In the middle, there is the impenetrable and massive Amazon rainforest. It took centuries even to penetrate the interior of Brazil. The U.S. declared its independence in 1776. Shortly thereafter, between 1810 to 1825, Latin American countries also rose up against Spain. Simón Bolívar wanted to establish Gran Colombia and unite all of South America under a single roof as a United States of the South. But there was a problem. The people of North America had been practicing self-governance in their local assemblies for centuries. They were no strangers to democracy. They knew exactly what to do once they gained independence. The people of Latin America, however, had been ruled for 300 years under absolute oppression, governed by decrees sent from Madrid. When the Spaniards departed, a massive authority vacuum emerged. No one knew what the rules were. Bolívar's dream of a great unified state was immediately torn apart by civil wars. While North America became a massive power as a single large country, and later expanding westward, Latin America was divided into dozens of small, hostile states constantly engaged in border wars. Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, Chile. Each built its own customs walls. Each established its own army. This fragmentation made it easier for foreign powers, especially Britain and later the US, to exploit the region through the divide and rule tactic. The world was changing in the mid-1800s, the Industrial Revolution. For a country to participate in this revolution, it needed two things: capital and an educated workforce. In North America, literacy was highly prioritized, partly due to the influence of Protestant culture. Small farmers sent their children to school. By the 1850s, the majority of the white population was literate, allowing them to operate complex machinery, perform engineering, or draft commercial law. In Latin America, however, the caste system, inherited from the colonial era, persisted. Education was reserved only for the top 1% of the population. The ruling class even viewed teaching the indigenous people and peasants to read and write as dangerous. The prevailing logic was, if they learn to read, they will rebel. Consequently, when the Industrial Revolution knocked on the door, while North America was building factories and producing technology, Latin America remained merely a grocer selling raw materials. Brazil sold coffee, Chile sold copper, and Argentina sold meat. However, they always imported the machinery from outside, from the north. If you cannot produce your own technology, you end up serving the wealth of others. Latin America fell into this very trap.
Let's move on to recent history. At the beginning of the 1900s, Argentina was actually one of the 10 richest countries in the world. It had surpassed France in GDP per capita. But this wealth was an illusion. It was based solely on the sale of agricultural products. When the World Wars and the 1929 Great Depression broke out, Europe and the US stopped purchasing goods from Latin America. Regional economies collapsed. This collapse gave rise to populist leaders who emerged as saviors, such as Perón in Argentina. These leaders made grand promises to the people, spent recklessly, and nationalized their economies. Investment does not go to a place where there is no political stability. Where investment is absent, unemployment and inflation follow. Latin American countries took on massive foreign debts during this period, and these debts continue to cripple many of them even today. While North America was undergoing a technological revolution, Silicon Valley, etc., during this time, South America was left wondering, how will I pay my debts? So, what is the situation today? Today, the difference is not just economic. It is also a difference of trust. When you start a business in the US and Canada, you know that the state will not come and seize your factory overnight. The laws protect you. We call this the rule of law. In Latin America, however, institutions are unfortunately still weak. Corruption has become the cancer of many countries. But not everything is bleak. Countries like Uruguay, Chile, and in recent years, Brazil, are taking giant steps to break this vicious cycle. They are investing in education, strengthening their institutions, and trying to move away from economies based solely on raw materials. Thank you for watching this video. Do you think Latin America can close this gap in the next 50 years? Or are geography and history truly destiny? Let's meet in the comments.